What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way. What if Pokemon were furries? That's the question that we're asking today. This has been done, obviously, a bunch of times, but I thought that I would like to take a crack at it, and since it is Pokemon week, basically for me, it comes like every other week, I've tried to do a Pokemon thing because I find it fun and, challenging myself with some fan art, which isn't my usual approach to art on my own. Also, of course, we have another random generator. I've used this one already for our Pokemon fusions. It was the first thing that I did after I finished the bootleg Pokemon challenge. So continuing on that trend, I am going to roll one Pokemon 3 times and we will make Pokemon furries kind of inspired by that. Probably kind of a combination between the typical like Ginjinka format where they're making like outfits inspired by the Pokemon as well. Ginjinka meaning like a human form of the Pokemon. Also just kind of trying to create a unique character as if, hey, what if, and this is more than likely, I mean we've seen it with the Poke fans, what if there were furries in the Pokemon universe? Like I said, there basically already are. But as opposed to making random personas for random things, I figured I would kind of do it in the reverse and make Pokemon into something else's Pokesona, if that makes sense. But let's just get into it, and a boop. Well, that's definitely a Pokemon I would expect to be in the Pokemon furry fandom. Gallade. I forgot to put up a clip. Hold on. So, I mean, Gardevoir is obviously the more popular of the two, but when Gallade came around, I mean, it's definitely not the least likely Pokemon in this situation. I think that a lot of people would find themselves attracted, for lack of a better word, to the concept of dressing as a Gallade. It wouldn't be that hard, for that matter. I just need, like, some weird, wide, pill-shaped hips for some reason. But yeah, almost kind of runs soft furry, really. He's too human. Like, this is almost more like a cosplay at this point. But, okay. So that is our first selection, and our next selection, a boop, Lugia! Oh, that also makes sense. That also makes sense, mama. Dude, Pokemon the Movie 2000 has such a grip on my psyche. Okay, final selection. A boop. Of course. Of course we had to get one that's so obscure. A Swalot. You know, I'm sure there are plenty of people that like to dress as ugly-ass animals. And, we are not ignoring the trend in Pokemon. It is cute. It is cute. It's just not something that I would necessarily anthropomorphize. So that will be interesting to do. So we have our selections, a very interesting range of selections, really. And let me put you guys down over on clip. There we go. Okay, so these are our selections. Sprites are obviously a little small, so I'll zoom in here. They're not that small, I just make my canvases huge. Really. But I mean, these are pretty pixelated as they come regardless. So again, we have a Gallade. Again, pretty soft core answer, I would feel, in the Pokemon universe, but there they are. Lugia, which I feel like would also be a very common answer, but probably a little bit more specific, giving those people from the islands in Pokemon the Movie 2000 the culture of people that believe in Lugia and play the ocarina about it. And then we have Swalot, which will be interesting to anthropomorphize, because that is mainly the big project here, right? Is to make these characters look kind of more humanoid. Gallade's gonna be difficult. Gallade's gonna be easy, I should say, I guess. Kind of. But like, what more can you do? What more can you do with Gallade? It's already humanoid. Lugia should be interesting too. In Swalot, I have no clue. I will figure something out. But at that, I will pop us over to speed paint voiceover, and I will show you guys what I have done with these three when we get there. So I will see you there. Up first, we have our Gallade. This was probably the easiest but weirdest of the three to anthropomorphize because the whole Ralts line really just looked like slightly pale humans with a few little changes. I feel like another aspect of anthro designs I wanted to explore here that I didn't fully explain in the beginning was the tendency to lean toward very unique and unnatural palettes. So beside clothing this Gallade, I wound up changing his hair to look more like human fringe and tried to better integrate that one really weird aspect of Gallade's anatomy in that like bulbous hip area. Did you swallow a watermelon sideways or something, dude? What is up with that? The results, especially clothed, make him look very curvaceous. Feels a bit like how I see my love handles on a bad day. I also made the ear crest things more human-like by adding a sort of ear-like matrix onto the inside. It makes him look a bit elven. The style I wound up going for felt very straightforward for me. I did kind of a scene e-boy sort of look with some dyed tips and layered clothes along with some very intense eye makeup. I wound up kind of forgetting to figure out a name for this character while recording, but afterward I decided to call this boy Scythe. Scythe would probably be the persona of a very similarly dressed human, or maybe a relatively innocuous teenager who's too shy to dress the way that they want. In an anthro Pokemon world, Scythe is quite reserved despite his looks, but always willing to be loud about self-expression. Growing up with Ralts and Curly as your previous evolutions can really make you disregard any socially preconceived notions of gender especially. Scythe expresses himself better online and spends a lot of time streaming, maybe a little bit more than is healthy for him. Next up, we have our Lugia. I feel like to some degree I wound up going for some very obvious character archetypes here, but I also couldn't really resist. I wound up going for a very cartoonishly nautical themed character, complete with that big collared old-fashioned sailor uniform. The anthropomorphizing of the character was pretty straightforward to me. Lugia's wings already resemble hands, and avian furries do similar a lot of the time. I also made the feet resemble little marine mammal flippers a bit more. The softened features and happy expression I wound up going for in the face really reminds me of that one episode of Pokemon Orange Islands with the baby Lugia Silver. Remember that? Remember how weird that was? Baby me was still obsessed with him though. I saw something about how the designer of Lugia had made it almost purely for the film and saw it as less like the ambiguous legendaries and more of a maternal character, so maybe that's where all of that came from. The character I went for here is much more ambiguous. I also went for a very seafoam style design along their body with some more greeny blues, and at some point decided to add some binoculars to fully give an adventurer vibe. I named this character Tide with a Y. As a persona, Tide would probably belong to someone who is obsessed with the sea, and therefore Lugia, regularly considered a guardian of the ocean. Also, being a flying type, they probably really evoke a sense of freedom and adventure. In an anthro Pokemon world, Tide is an explorer of both sea and land, ironically traveling by boat a lot when they're already a semi-aquatic Pokemon, but I guess sacrifices must be made for the sake of fashion. I could also see them being a bit like a Selkie or a mermaid that can come maybe closer to their more feral Pokemon form in the water, and maybe it's not as convenient all the time. Finally, we have Swalot. I expected to struggle with this, and I did. I spent a long time trying to figure out to what extent I wanted this character to be anthropomorphized, but I figured since the other two were quite humanoid, it would make sense for this one too. Swalot does have a bit of a kitty paw situation going on, so I knew I could carry that down to the feet at least. I made the stature quite a bit shorter than the other two, given Swalot doesn't really have legs to begin with. Initially, I thought to go more masculine, but I thought maybe the plump lips could work well with a girl character, and I always like some subversion of expectations. I made the rounded sort of globules at the bottom of the design into both a skirt-like look and a hairstyle, kind of segmenting it to top and bottom. I also thought it would be funny to translate the diamond designs on Swalot's body to a sweater for a sort of Argyle pattern, which inspired this girl's name, Argyle. I also used aspects from both the normal and shiny coloration of the Pokemon for a little bit more interest. Swalot, in general, takes me as an enthusiast persona, either someone with a particular fascination on some very interesting forums, or someone who just really likes the Pokemon and or challenges themselves to find a way to anthropomorphize it in a cute way. I don't think Swalot is ugly by itself, but it is certainly hard to change into a humanoid shape with, well, the way that it is. Argyle would be the persona of an artist who is also a scientist that specializes in poison Pokemon. I know a lot of, biologists who are also furries on my timeline, so I figured that would make sense. In an anthro-Pokemon world, she's a very self-expressive, bubbly personality, and maybe just a little bit freaky. But those are my designs for this week. This was definitely an interesting design challenge overall. The major challenge for me here, clearly, was the Swalot. It's still not my favorite design, but I'm relatively happy with where I wound up with it. Argyle is pretty cute, even if she doesn't quite keep a Swalot-looking character to her in my eyes. Which of these is your favorite, though? I'm partial to Tide. I think they turned out really cute. You can also let me know if there are any future art challenges you'd like to see me do in the future here, Pokemon related or not. At that, though, I'll leave this here, and I'll see y'all next time.